rollers and snake handlers and snake charmers and all kinds of things, that the Buddha said that this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for how to get out of human suffering, because even the snake charmers suffer when their wife beats them with his flute.
Yeah.
Today we will talk about the Anapanasati Sutta, which is number 117, 118, excuse me, in the Majjhima Nikaya. And that this sutta stands unique in the sense that this is the teaching of the Buddha in the application of the Noble Eightfold Path, most specifically of how to apply sati, how to apply right effort, how to apply the right view, and also how to apply one's right sama sankappa, or right right attitude. Getting distracted there. So, in any way, this practice of the Anapanasati Sutta then has also references with the Satipatthana Sutta. In fact, it references it directly, and so those two suttas become twin suttas. And I'll explain it. Also, the Anapanasati Sutta is unique in a way that the beginning of it is pointing out how important this sutta is. And yet many people don't put a lot of attention on it. But when you read the beginning of the sutta with the understanding of they're making a point here, this is not just, oh, this big deal kind of happened, and when it happened, it was the Anapanasati Sutta, but rather that the Buddha actually put out word that on a particular full moon evening, that he was going to be giving this teaching, and that word spread around. So he actually gathered together a great deal of people for this. And that it also talks about then that when that gathering happened, that he mentioned many of the names of the very famous monks, including Chana and Mahakasapa and many of the others there. I think, in fact, the one that's the surprising missing is Ananda is not there. So this is also perhaps a very early sutta that was done.
Was
And
Ananda?
that, well, in the sense that Ananda came to the Buddha after the Buddha was teaching for 20 years, and then he stayed with him for the next 25 years.
And was
Okay, so,
Ananda a prince? Or am I
well,
remembering something
yeah,
else?
he actually took over the duties of what Siddhartha would have had by generation, but we're not quite sure of the governmental
Okay.
structure. We do know that it was a really, really big, important family in the Sakyan clan.
Mhm.
Okay, that his dad, in fact, was the boss of the time. We could call him a king because that's the kind of language that they would use. But it seemed like that he was elected for a 20-year period, and so it's kind of like it looks like that Ananda became the king for 20 years, and after that 20-year period, he then came and stayed with the Buddha. That seems to be what happened, is that he did his, or he was elected to office for 20 years, and he was elected to the office of being king.
Mhm.
But we're
So
playing with language a little bit here because we
yeah.
really don't know the structure of their system. In any case,
Mhm.
back to the
Was
Anapanasati Sutta, we have that not only is gathering there, but the Buddha points out various groups with various teachers. And he points out that some have with he didn't really put it which teacher had which group of people, but he said there are teachers here, some with 60 students, some with 40 students, some with 20 students. That was the frame of reference. And so we're talking about really almost like a small university with the entire student body there, with all of the faculty and everything. Okay, so this is the kind of the setting of the Anapanasati Sutta. And then he talks about that there are those here who have various steps of nobility. And then he talks about that there are various ones here who practice various side issues, in the sense that there are some here that are practicing the jhana. There are others here that are practicing something that is called metta, and that I present to you now with those groups this Anapanasati. In other words, this was the Buddha's kind of an introduction to bring some unity into how to practice the Eightfold Noble Path, because there was a lot of variety, and there's an awful lot of ways of practicing jhana that people get into jhana and they don't know what to do with them. But the Anapanasati Sutta actually spells that out, and it really nails it down in other suttas. Okay, so this is the point about the Anapanasati. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, in fact, has been known to say that the Buddha only taught one practice. And we can use the word meditation if we like, but they didn't have a word meditation back then. What they had was the word Anapanasati. And the word sati is the most important one. In fact, the word sati ties it right back into the Eightfold Noble Path, as well as it also ties it directly into the satipatthana. All of these key ingredients work in the issue of sati. And in fact, the crowning issue is in the group called the Sambhojana, which is also in the Anapanasati Sutta. And that sati there means to begin to have unremitting sati. Okay, and we can practice unremitting sati when we have sati on the in-breath and sati on the out-breath, and sati on the in-breath and sati on the out-breath, and that becomes right there unremitting sati while we're doing it.
Can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
This is talking about the stages of insight again, but Daniel talked about how if you're stuck in equanimity, you know what that is, right?
Okay.
That you should make your meditation object equanimity instead of the breath, and you can, oh, you're frozen. Oh, no, you're fine now. So I'm trying to focus.
Yes, that is actually something that can be done when the mind is really sharp, focused, and you know what you're doing. But if you start doing that kind of stuff as a meditation because you're a beginner and you don't know what to do, so you've heard this, that, and the other advanced technique or whatever, then that's very much like a child sitting down and he doesn't want to play the music that his teacher, music teacher, has given him. He wants to play a song he heard on the radio. And he doesn't have the sheet music, and so he scrounged all over the place to get the sheet music. He finds that, he puts it in front of him, and then he can't play it because it's too difficult.
What if I think I can do that? Am I fooling myself then?
Okay, then go for it. Your meditation is yours. You want to know about Anapanasati, I'll teach you all about it, but I can't control you and your mind. I don't even care. You go play with what you want to play with, but if you want to get some good results, you'll listen to the Buddhists talking about Anapanasati. Okay. All right. So yes, the Buddha taught one kind of meditation, and this Anapanasati, and it is a complete meditation, and it has all aspects of it, including equanimity, when the time is right. When you get your mind fit for work, then that's one of the things to work on.
Mhm.
But your mind is not fit for work because you can't stay focused on what we're talking about. You go flittering off onto equanimity or something. Okay? You're not focused. Let's stay focused on what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
This is what we mean by it. This is that we got to pay attention. We got to focus the mind in the sense of removing unwholesome thoughts and keeping only wholesome thoughts in. So if we're having wholesome thoughts of the Dhamma and we're listening to the Dhamma, then we can take that in and gain great delight from it. But so long as we keep taking it in and comparing to what we know here or what we have there or whatever random thought comes in from the radio or YouTube or whatever like that, then the mind is scattered and it doesn't really grasp what we're talking about. This is why teachers at the blackboard will stand there and poke the blackboard, making a tapping noise, and then tell the kids to pay attention.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Okay? So this is how we have to work with the Anapanasati. And so back to the point about when the Buddha introduced Anapanasati, he introduced it in the following ways. He talks about one of the points about it is that it is of great fruit. It is of great benefit. And then he mentions an interesting word, and that is Ittyapada. Now, Ittyapada in the Pali means the foundation of Itya, which is also cities, which is the word that is known as power. Now, there are two kinds of power. There is real power, and then there is magical power. Magical power is the kind of power that people in Buddhism want and never get, and they're always grasping and clinging and never getting it. And while they don't get that kind of power that they want, they fail to develop the kind of real power that they can have.
Mhm.
Okay, and one of those real powers is clairvoyance.
Oh,
You
okay.
know what I mean by that? The word
Oh.
clairvoyance
Mhm.
means that you can see clearly.
I see.
You can
Okay.
see clearly if you are paying attention and you look directly and notice and note what you're seeing, then you can see clearly. Most people don't. And so by learning to focus the mind in this way, we begin to develop some powers. But other aspects of this actually, the definitions of these powers closely match the definition also of sukha in the sense of uh,
Satisfaction.
feeling satisfied.
Mhm.
And that's a great power. In the beginning, it's finally I'm satisfied. Finally, I can relax.
Mhm.
But later, when we really need power, that's satisfied. If I'm satisfied with the moment, then I can really deal with this moment and deal with it as a lion. Okay, without anger, without frustration, just everything is okay, and I've got this one, right? And we can
Mhm.
deal with it. So this is the power of feeling secure, invincible, fearless. Is a feeling that we generate, but then it becomes a power. And so these are the powers. Another power that is there is actually the power of wealth. Wealth is power, right?
Money
But
or
guess what?
something.
We're not talking about
Uh,
money.
mhm.
We're talking about the attitude that I've got plenty. I got plenty of mojo. I got plenty of happiness. I got plenty of Dhamma. I got all we need and a whole bunch more. Have a gold brick or two on me. That's wealth. Okay. Generosity.
Mhm.
So this is the powers that are talked about that the Buddha recommends that we practice for Anapanasati.
Mhm.
And then he also says that we practice, and this part that I'm about to talk about here is repeated several times throughout the suttas. And because it's repeated that way, I'll go ahead and lead you through it before we go into the middle part of the sutta. Okay, and that is that we practice Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the four foundations of mindfulness. Okay, by saying that, that's why he said, or that's why he's indicating, because of that as the basis, that in fact Anapanasati is broken down into body, feelings, mind, and mind objects, the way that it's broken down. But that's not the way that it's to be practiced. That's the way that it's to be set out in the sense of, let us say, an organized formal example. And that happens within other systems also, um, to where you study this system and then you study this system over there, and then you can bring these things together in
Mhm.
correlation. Okay. So with Anapanasati, we put it into this context of the four foundations of mindfulness with body, feelings, mind, and mind objects. And then each one of these is broken down into four groups,
Mhm.
leaving us with 16 stages of Anapanasati.
Stage 16. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that they are actually heavily overlapping. Okay.
Mhm.
Heavily overlapping. And that they're the heaviest part of the overlapping is with the body, the feelings, and the mind, where the mind objects takes a different turn. And that really that one cannot be correctly understood without looking at other suttas to compare them to find out really what's going on. Yeah. So, um, and by the way, one of those sutras would be 111, one by one as they occur, where uh, uh, the Buddha is talking about Sariputta's practice, to where
Okay.
what is worthy of noting when the mind is really fit for work is one of these objects of equanimity. But
Mhm.
there's a whole lot of other stuff in there first that the mind needs to focus on and get it down so that we've got the strength of mind. Okay, so this is actually an exercise in getting the mind very strong.
Mhm.
And then that strong mind then begins to be one of those powers that was mentioned. So one of the benefits is that you wind up having a very strong mind and also very quick. And so very Puta in that Sutta 111 uh, has uh, quick wisdom, strong wisdom, and also
Mhm.
laughing wisdom. Sometimes translated as joyous wisdom. All right,
Mhm.
so this is the kind of wisdom that Sariputta has, and so you can see that that's part of that power, and that we're developing powers with the body, we're developing powers with the feelings, and we're developing powers with the mind by understanding the nature of the mind with the powers that we gain through the usage of the fourth group, what's called Dhammanupassana, which would be in the old system, the body would be earth, the feelings would be water, the mind would be fire, and
Yeah.
mental objects would be the air. This
Mhm.
is the old elemental system that was around many hundreds of years, that the Greeks had it, Romans had it, Persians had it, Indians had it,
Mhm.
Chinese had it. It's all over the place. Okay, these four basic elements, which is nothing but what we now know is to be various gradients in temperature. If you get
Oh, like
anything cold
stages of
enough,
matter.
anything
Yeah.
you get cold enough for
Mhm.
it, it will become solid. If you get it a little bit warmer than that, whatever it is, will become a liquid.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you can get it to burn, it will burn. Okay. And if it burns, it will smoke.
And this is a very scientific question. What about super states or whatever? There's other
You will have
states.
to ask your scientific questions to the old philosophers of more than 3,000 years ago that came up with this system.
Mm-hmm.
But it was part of the way of looking at the mind. It was a mindset or a categorization system that people had in the time, and so the Buddha used that as a convenient reference to put the body, mind, feeling
Mind
system
output.
into. Okay, it just kind of plugged in there, and so he used that as an example because basically what we're talking about here is that they don't know, and this was also true of the people who practice meditations. They were practicing meditations that had to do with external objects.
Mm-hmm.
External objects like casinos, okay, fire meditations, air meditations, crystal gazing, water meditations, uh, all of these kind of meditation objects were well known long before the time of the Buddha. And that
Mm-hmm.
people could get themselves into all kinds of interesting mystical states and have all kinds of mental adventures in there because they really didn't know what they were doing. But they were sometimes enjoyable and sometimes quite frightening. As basically it was, whatever world that you want to create inside your mind can be done. And so, including the development of strong mental capabilities were known back then. But Buddha was looking for something different. He was looking not for those kind of powers of mental control or mental object maneuvers or any of that kind of stuff, whether it existed or not in reality or just in the minds of the people who believed strongly enough that they had such powers that they convinced other people that they had them. But it was only a matter of mind control rather than mind actually creating magical powers. So people are very good at that.
Mind control.
And when they get caught, they're called liars and charlatans and frauds and all of that kind of stuff. The people who believe in it, gosh, it's real. And there's holy rollers and snake handlers and snake charmers and all kinds of things that the Buddha said that this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for how to get out of human suffering because even the snake charmers suffer when their wife beats them with his flute.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's looking for something else. He's not looking for that kind of power anymore. He's looking for, in fact, a way of cleaning the mind out. And that's what he started turning all of those objects of meditation that everyone was using and taught him and whatnot from the outside to the inside. Now, there were already groups working with the breath, and so he borrowed from them. This was something that, in fact, he talked about is the fact that it was like he put an old mechanism back together. And an example of that would be that there was a grandfather clock just sitting around. Everybody knew about it. They know that it should tick and talk, but it doesn't, and they don't know what to do about it. And there's been various people inspecting it and looking at it and whatnot like that. And some kid comes on and he pulls this thing and he puts like that and he pushes it back and he says, "Hey, this is what's going on." And now it starts working. Okay. Now what happens is that because the stories get around, this kid is now responsible for the entire clock. When all he did was just put something together. And that's what the Buddha did. He put something together that is almost so simple it's like a light switch.
The present moment, right?
It's right.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Absolutely. The question or the key to dukkha is to be here now, literally, because in this present moment there is no suffering. So you're right. That's absolutely correct.
Mhm.
And there's more to it than that, but that's basically it.
Mhm.
But another way that we can say it would also be from that phrase that the Buddha came up with when he was figuring this stuff out was, aha, I see you, Mara. All right. Now, what's that's an indication of is so many other suttas, including with the Anapanasati Sutta. In fact, the Anapanasati Sutta has a very specific way of looking at it. But what we're talking about with I see you, Mara, is that um, we can see that this thought in the mind is unwholesome, that it's a devil, it's the world. Okay. This
Mhm.
is why the word Mara or Maya have so many definitions, but they're all metaphors back to the unwholesome thoughts that we have in the mind. It's like in English, the joke is that the devil made me do it. Okay. And that the cartoon has an angel on one side shoulder whispering in one ear, and the devil is on the other whispering in the other ear. Okay. So this is, in fact, our, um, you could say, in the sense of the wholesome versus unwholesome, but you could also see it in the sense of greed versus the desire to get rid of. But in any case, this aha, I see you, Mara, aha, I see you, unwholesome thought.
Mhm.
That means that now, because we can see it, we can do something about it. We can remove it.
Mhm.
Thoughts are easy to remove if that's our intention. The reason that they're not so easy to remove is because generally it's not our intention to remove them. Okay.
Fix them.
That that in fact the Buddha makes one point about it is that's in Sutta number 20, I think, where there are 5 stages of things that you can do to remove unwholesome thoughts. And one of them is like, suppose that you're just looking at an ugly object,
Stop looking at it.
and all you have to do is just look away. I don't want to look at that, you know? All right, well, you can do that exactly as easily with the thoughts. Just as
Mhm.
easy, you just don't want to look at it, and you just throw it out. You just turn your head. Okay, this is how easy it is. So, this is actually the very, very first start of it if we're looking at it in the sense of how to practice, as opposed to how to look at it in the sense of what are each of the 4 steps of the body, what are each of the 4 steps of the feelings, what are the 4 steps of the mind, and what are the 4 steps of. Let's wait for a little while and start. Instead of looking at it as a keyboard with a scale, let's look
Mhm.
at it in the sense of chords that we can play, and so we'll approach
Mhm.
it from that direction. All right. So with sati in the Eightfold Noble Path, that's the practice that is just the key ingredient. This is in fact it. If we can't remember to practice correctly, then we're not going to practice correctly. So the key ingredient then of all of Buddha's systems is to
Mhm.
remember, to wake up and remember that we have a choice here.
Mhm.
Okay, if that waking up process is done there at step 9 of Anapanasati to wake up and experience the mind.
Mhm.
So this waking up and experiencing the mind then is right view and right sati, but it also then immediately brings in right effort in the sense of step 10 of Anapanasati is to gladden the mind.
Mhm.
And the word gladdened is used there, but another word we could use would be to brighten the mind, which we've already talked about this. Now we're seeing this is actually where it lies. It lies in this sutta, and this
Mhm.
sutta is the way of the practice of how the system is laid out.
Mhm.
And so all of this stuff fits exactly together. It all fits together. But when it's introduced to the students as bits and pieces, so this week we'll do Satipatthana, and this week we'll do Anapanasati, and this week we'll do the Eightfold Noble Path, and this week we'll do that Four Noble Truths or something like that, then the students get an idea that it's disjointed. That there's this, I've got to run this, 5 things of this, and 4 of that, and 5 more of that, and 7 of this, and 8 of that, and 9 of this, and 12 of them things, and 16 of Anapanasati, and it's just like kind of overwhelming to where really all of these are like the labels that we would have on, let us say, a mechanism like a clock that was at the school, to where every piece was properly labeled with its function and all of that kind of stuff, so that it would become very intuitive of how that plugs in. Okay. That in fact, the plug-in between the teaching of the Satipatthana and the Paticca the plug-in there is the 5 aggregates. So that you take the Four Noble Truths, turn it into the 5 aggregates, and then it plugs immediately right into the Paticca, which we'll talk about more. But the important thing is to understand that all of this stuff fits together. It comes together almost like what is known as sometimes a Chinese wooden box puzzle.
I'm not familiar.
You're not familiar? Okay, you could also think of it as then a jigsaw puzzle. And so every day the student is given about 10 or 20 pieces, and they try to take it to the table, see if these fit in with that over there and all of this kind of stuff, and 10 more pieces tomorrow, and 10 the next day. And it's really hard to put all of this stuff together. But if we can get an overview of the fact that we're actually talking about how to get the mind almost immediately out of the first noble truth of there is dukkha, I'm worried, into immediately the third noble truth. Immediately, that thought is out, and I've just gladdened the mind, and I've got it. That it is not dukkha, nirodha forever, and then finally some, or dukkha forever, and finally some nirodha. Finally, we get it done. Okay, this is actually the Western thought of delayed gratification, to where the teachings of the Buddha has to do with what you're doing right now. Okay, and so the Anapanasati Sutta, as a general context, is taught so that we can understand clearly the Satipatthana. But the Satipatthana is taught clearly so that we can understand the Sambhujana. And the Sambhujana then leads to the understanding of knowledge and deliverance. Now, this word knowledge and deliverance is a coupled pair of Pali words that Vimukti and Moksha, I think, but I'm not sure. But in any case, they appear in many different suttas. And that you can actually think of these two things as the English language word enlightenment. But the word enlightenment has 2 qualities to it, and so does this pair of words that is known as, or translated as, knowledge and deliverance. Okay, so the first kind of enlightenment is knowledge, or the light of day, sunlight. We can see when the lights are
clairvoyance.
Okay. Well, not just clairvoyance, being able to see dukkha, see everything, see exactly what's going on inside one's own mind, and understand that human minds are built that way. And so you can understand the minds of others. You don't know the content, but you can certainly see their behavior. But there's a whole lot more seeing to be done.
So wait, what is clairvoyance again?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's like this, that we're standing at the doorway of a darkened room. And I'm about to talk about turning the lights on. And when I do, you're naming a few of the objects that you think you'll recognize once the lights are turned on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying don't categorize too much.
We don't know yet.
Because once the lights are turned on, this is a whole room for, I'm a whole Dhamma to look at.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff in there, so don't categorize it too much into just one thing like clairvoyance. All right, so there's a
Okay.
whole lot more to it than that.
Okay.
So the next kind of enlightenment is when things are no longer heavy; they're light. The reason that they're light is because we have, in fact, one of the things that we have seen is ropes and bondages that keep us
Mm-hmm.
tied down. And
Mm-hmm.
so we decide now with the deliverance to cut those ropes,
Mm-hmm.
to cut those fetters, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that we can float up into the air, mentally at least, because we're not being able to deal with actual gravity.
Mm-hmm.
We have to deal with the gravity of one's own mind.
Yeah.
And we can cut our bonds from the gravity of one's own mind one by one as we see them. Each fetter we see, we can cut. And the first way that we start doing that is start cutting out thoughts that are unwholesome, because that's one more thread of the bondage normally that we have.
Mm.
Okay, so this is why step 10 is so important, of gladdening the mind, keeping the mind gladdened, which means brightened up, which means wholesome thoughts, which means freedom from unwholesome thoughts. Okay, and so all of these sutras fit together with this. Okay, so once we do that, the next thing that we do with one's right effort is that we take that sati that just occurred, that we use to gladden the mind, we now turn it to the breath, which this can be done within a split second, literally within more than easily down there to half or a quarter of a second, that you can just throw those thoughts out, gladden the mind, and part of the gladdening the mind is a new deep in breath. Well, I don't have to think about that anymore, but the words, well, I'm glad I don't have to think that anymore, is a
Ten
long
awesome.
time. You can get the feeling almost immediately into here now, like, oh, never mind, and just throw that stuff out. So this is where step 1 and 2, most specifically of Anapanasati, come in, and that is the mindfulness of breathing. Now, if you're doing long, slow breathing, then that means that there's gaps maybe between the mindfulness, and there's all kinds of other stuff to do. To where if you're doing the short breathing, because of the mindfulness of each in breath and out breath and continuing that, there's not a whole lot more going on rather than just the short breathing.
Mm-hmm.
You got to really pay attention to keep it going. And so we begin to feel things and learn things and get lightheaded and all kinds of stuff. But wow, it is certainly not dukkha. And so when we practice this way with these various stages, what happens when we gladden the mind and energize the body, then the feelings begin to kick in automatically. Now, they can kick in one of two ways. One of the ways that they can kick in is with uh, feelings of anxiety or worry or frustration. Then, in fact, the students begin to get very, very acutely aware of how they feel. And many of them don't then know what to do about it after they have those acute feelings. They don't know what to do, but they recognize them. That in fact, this is the kind of thing that will lead through the noting system that is not working correctly into things like the dark night of the soul, because they're very, very good at noting negative feelings and have no skills at changing the way they feel. This is, in fact, an important process that we're doing. That process is that we're beginning to change the way we think, change the way we breathe. And if we can actually take control of the breath and change the way we're breathing, then we can change the mind. We can control the mind. And by doing that, correctly, we also begin to change the way we feel.
Uh-huh.
We begin to change the way we feel from the anxiety and the worries and the frustrations and the tension. We begin to intentionally gladden the mind and then monitor the mind to begin to feel the way that we are thinking. So if we feel like this is a wonderful breath and we say it's a wonderful breath, then let us experience that, in fact, this is a really good breath. This is a lot of fun, this breathing stuff. This is quite magnificent, and we feel really good by doing it.
Mm.
So we also begin to feel good in the sense that we feel secure and comfortable and satisfied. This is the sukha. Okay, at this level, we're talking about now step 6 of Anapanasati, and we develop that also as a skill. Just like sati itself is a skill to be developed, that gladdening the mind is a skill to be developed, inspecting and noting the mind is a skill to be developed, and taking control of the breathing is a skill to be developed. Now we begin to understand that one's own joy and happiness is a skill also to be developed. This is it at that point of sukha. The sukha is that this is really nice. This really feels good. This is great stuff, which is beyond a thought. It's now an experience because you can actually have it as a feeling, that we don't have feelings of worry or anxiety or tension, that we have feelings of everything's okay, everything is fine. All right, so now we're practicing step 6 with step 1 and 2. We're beginning to notice in from step 3, which recognize where the body is, begin to notice what's happening with our environment, but also with this spending now with that feeling more time in the center. So we're listening better, seeing better. We're not thinking so much. And the thinking that we're doing is not scattered all over the place. It's really kind of localized into the fact that we're only having really good, wholesome thoughts. And paying attention to the breathing, paying attention to what the mind is doing. This is how we develop then those feelings. So as we begin to get good at this, we begin to recognize that we get good at this. And we have knowledge that we can get good. And because of that understanding and knowledge that we can practice this and get good at this, now we're building the quality we call success. Success is a little bit different than a satisfaction. But guess what? Success is also one of the powers, one of the idiopada, one of the idiots. The pada are actually the basis of power, are the Eightfold Noble Path we've been talking about. Okay, so this all ties together that way. But the power then that comes from the practice of the Eightfold Noble Path is power of satisfaction. Satisfaction and success. The real success. Wow, we can do this. I am successful. We can accomplish this. And so this is when the fourth ingredient of the Eightfold Noble Path, Sama Sankappa, really starts to grow as a skill. The skill of right attitude, and our right attitude will then guide our right thoughts. So long as we have the attitude of a victim, so long as we have an attitude that this stuff is hard work and that I've got to struggle and it's worth the effort, all of those kinds of negative kinds of thoughts we have with the loser's attitude or the victim's attitude, we change that into the winner's attitude of I can do this. I'm successful at this. This is where we add step.
Oh, there you go.
You're back.
Yeah.
Okay. And that step 5 of Anapanasati is what is the Pali word is piti. A lot of people don't understand piti, and I think the biggest problem with it is that it's translated into English as rapture. And we're kind of stuck with that word as rapture. Nobody knows what the word rapt is. Okay. But we do understand words like euphoric. And it also has the quality of feeling really on top of the game. Like you've really got this. We're developing that feeling that this is really nice, that we can control this, that we have some power now, this power of satisfaction. And there's many examples that we have of this out in the world. And in fact, this is the goal that almost everyone wants. Sports people, they want that thrill of the win. They want that thrill of the win so much that they're willing to put up with the agony of defeat over and over and over again, and their life then becomes kind of a defeat. Because everybody wants it. There's everybody wants that gold medal, and only one's going to get it. And everybody else has to suffer the defeat of wanting it and not getting it. Okay? And so that's the suffering. That's dukkha, is not getting what we want. Now, for the first time, we're actually going in the direction of getting what we want. And the thrill of doing it. Knowing we can do it inside one's own mind, and that it's up to us as a choice. That's thrilling. That's euphoric. Recognize that we can do this. And so you allow that euphoria. Just stop a second and experience that. Just let yourself feel really good that you can do this. Just allow it to be, you're a success. You could do this. It almost feels like that the muscles in the arm want to contract. The arm want to go up into the air, just like at a football game. What does the guy do when he wins the match? He throws his arms in the right? What do the people in the stands do that are on who have the thought, this is my team that won this touchdown, or that's my guy who won the touchdown? They cheer and rave, yippee. In fact, this is the reason people go to football games, is to get that thrill. This thrill that we're talking about, that is the piti. The exhilaration, the feeling that I've got this. This is good stuff. And it can be generated. This is actually part of the Anapanasati Sutta, but now things begin to click into place in another regard. And that is that we're actually developing 5 factors and bringing them together. Each one is a skill. Number one of all is that the mind does not have any unwholesome thoughts. There's no hindrances there for us to practice correctly. Number 2, we've got satisfaction. We've got comfort, security, safety, contentment, satisfaction. And now later we begin to build this triumphal part of it, of euphoric winning. I've got this. That feeling of can do. You can call it the lion's pose. The feeling that we're on top of the world. We become emperor of our own pile of dirt. We finally are on top of our own pile of dirt. And so we take that regard as, we're the boss here. We got this far. Feel the way we want to feel. And right now we feel really, really good. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that really, really good feeling then is the piti that we've just added with the sukha. And we've already added that to the seclusion from the unwholesome thoughts. We've got the mind energized with the breathing, which means now we can focus and really pay attention. And this is what is referred to as gathering of the samadhi factors. The samadhi means gathering of the factors, and we've just gathered the 5 factors of the first jhana. This is the first jhana, is this piti and sukha and wholesome thoughts, a feeling of euphoria, a feeling of I've got this, a feeling of let me at 'em. Okay. And so this is the way that we practice with these first 3 parts of the Anapanasati. That's why they overlap. And in fact, each one of them has an investigation. Each one of them has a development. Each one of them is a skill to be developed. And each one of them has a nurturing point with that skill. And the nurturing point with the body is step 4 of Anapanasati, which is basically just to relax. You got it made. You're the champion here. We got this wired. No worries, mate. And so we get into a state of complete relaxation. So this relaxation of step 4 of Anapanasati is also sometimes referenced with the first jhana as sort of the 6th factor, is relaxation of the body. And so now we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Anapanasati already mentioned. We got step 5 of piti, 6 of sukha. We have yet to do 7 and 8. We have already done step 9 and 10, and we have yet to do step 11 and 12 and on. But we've got that many. So look how many notes we've got already. We got about half the scale gone. Okay, so this is the way that we begin practice. And the important point is the outcome of that feeling of being on top of the world, and also having the mind on alert to guard first. The first thing that we're going to guard, the important thing now to look at, is to make sure that the mind stays wholesome. That's the first job that we do, because you've been in wholesome, unwholesome mix all along. It was like the doors to the mind have always been open, and any old girl could pass in and out. Now we're going to start guarding that door, and we're going to only allow wholesome thoughts in and not allow unwholesome. And so this is where we're practiced now, and start to gain the skill of just being able to sit in that state with one wholesome thought after another, relaxed.
And if there are unwholesome thoughts, should we go back to the... If there are unwholesome...
If there are unwholesome thoughts, throw them out. Aha, I caught you. I see you. Out you go. Okay. Then we can say, I'm glad that's gone. And now we're back into wholesome thoughts. Yeah, everything's okay. That guy's gone now. I don't have to worry about him coming back. He's gone. Everything's going to be all right. Everything is safe and secure. Everything is competent. Everything is comfortable. Everything is secure. Wow, this is nice. Okay, so going over the factors of sukha, going over the factors of sukha over and over will help create them, so that when you have thoughts of safety and security, you'll begin to have feelings of safety and security, which is part of the relaxation, by the way, of the body. We don't have to be on alert anymore because there's no danger right now. So we need to have thoughts of there's no danger, no alligators, no crocodiles, no bugs, no ants, no wives, nothing. Everything is all right. Everything is cool. Everything is comfortable. The weather is fine. No problems. And so the body begins to relax with that, as well as we're developing that feeling of, actually, we can call it well-being, the feeling of well-being. This is the practice of Anapanasati, making the mind really fit for work. And the first job that we give it is to make sure that every thought is wholesome. Later, once we're able to do that, we can actually work on seeing and experiencing equanimity once we can get into it. But you can't go investigate your way into it without going through the beginning part. Have to be able to get the mind done. So we'll talk about equanimity at another time and other things like that. And so right now we've got a kind of a basis for the Anapanasati Sutta. And we'll plug in some of the holes in time. So you have any questions before we finish?
I think I'm good.
You think you got it, huh?
I don't know if I got it, but yeah.
Well, go do it. Do it. You know you can do it.
Mhm.
You can get that that mojo. You can get that attitude.
Oh, should I make my practice short breathing then, if I want to, instead of long breathing?
If you like, I've got no problem with the breathing, because while you're doing that, you're developing sati.
I think
You're
it
also
works.
energizing the body and making it very healthy. So I
Well,
can't complain at all. But don't neglect the other parts of Anapanasati.
the capture the mind.
Right. To make sure that this thought is wholesome. Like we talked about before, while you're doing step 2 of the short breath. By the way, you're very good at it. Congratulations. You're paying attention.
Thank you. So,
And while you're doing that, it's hard to pay much attention to anything else. And so while I'm talking and you're doing it, it's a little bit hard to pay attention, but at least you have no time left for extraneous thoughts at all. So you've got only wholesome thoughts going on during that time. That's why that breathing is so valuable, is because it's really hard to have unwholesome thoughts while you're doing that kind of breathing.
Yeah, I can do it after I run, actually.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's continue then later.
Okay.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll see you
Thank
next
you.
couple of days. You continue your practice,
Mm-hmm.
getting wholesome thoughts. One wholesome, happy thought, one after another.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty.